In 1905, the greatest engineering project in human history collapsed, not from landslides or broken machinery, but from a tiny insect. But here is a popular history leaves out. The United States government actively protected the bugs and almost fired the only man trying to kill them. Before the Panama Canal could move oceans, America had to fight a brutal house-to-house biological war. To understand how they won it, we have to look at a catastrophic bureaucratic delusion. To understand the dread hanging over Panama in 1905, you have to look at what happened to the French 20 years before. In 1881, Ferdinand de Lesseps, the celebrated diplomat who had successfully built the Suez Canal, led a French company into Panama to cut a sea level channel. De Lesseps brought brilliant engineers and state-of-the-art steam machinery, but he brought no understanding of tropical disease. Over 9 years, yellow fever and malaria tore through the French workforce. Workers were struck down by sudden fevers, turned yellow from liver failure, vomited dark coagulated blood, and died in days. The hospital at Ancon became a death trap. In a cruel twist of historical irony, French nurses placed the legs of hospital beds inside small ceramic bowls filled with water to keep ants from crawling up to the patients. Those tiny, quiet rings of stagnant water inside the hospital wards became perfect breeding grounds for mosquitoes, infecting patients who had arrived with simple injuries. An estimated 20,000 workers died under the French effort. The company collapsed in financial ruin and human tragedy, leaving millions of dollars of rusted machinery buried under jungle vines. When the United States bought the canal rights in 1904, American officials swore they would not repeat the French mistake, yet they immediately set about making the exact same error. When American forces arrived in Panama, they brought along a doctor named William Crawford Gorgas. Gorgas was appointed chief sanitary officer of the Canal Zone. He was not a stranger to tropical fever. He had served in Havana during the Spanish-American War, where he worked alongside the team led by Dr. Walter Reed. Reed's team had verified a radical theory first proposed 2 decades earlier by a Cuban physician named Dr. Carlos Finlay. Yellow fever was not caused by foul jungle air, decaying vegetation, or dirty clothing. It was transmitted exclusively by a single species of mosquito, Aedes aegypti. Meanwhile, British research had proven that malaria was carried by another insect entirely, the Anopheles mosquito. Gorgas kept that if you wanted to build the canal, you did not need to sanitize the dirt. You had to destroy the insects. He submitted a detailed sanitation plan to the Isthmian Canal Commission in Washington. He asked for copper wire screening for every living quarter, tons of sulfur for fumigation, supplies of pyrethrum insect powder, and hundreds of workers to drain standing water. The Commission's response was utter contempt. The head of the commission, Rear Admiral John Walker, scoffed at the idea that tiny insects could defeat the United States Navy and Army. Walker slashed Gorgas' budget, denied the request for window screens, and told him that spending money to chase bugs was a wild, irresponsible expenditure. Walker believed in the old medical consensus. Disease was caused by bad smells and filth. He ordered Gorgas to spend his time painting buildings, sweeping streets, and digging sewer trenches, leaving living quarters completely wide open to the jungle air. For a year, Gorgas argued, pleaded, and filled out requisitions that were routinely ignored or rejected in Washington. And while bureaucrats argued over supply costs, the mosquitoes did what they had always done. By early 1905, yellow fever cases began to climb in Panama City and Colon. When the outbreak reached the administrative center at Culebra that June, the delusion collapsed. Panicked commission members in Washington did not blame their own budget cuts. They blamed Gorgas. Commission Chairman Theodore formally requested that Secretary of War William Howard Taft fire Gorgas and replace him with a traditional doctor who understood proper sanitation, meaning someone who would scrub floors and burn dirty clothes. Gorgas' career was on the verge of destruction. But before Taft could sign the dismissal papers, President Theodore Roosevelt sought a second opinion from his personal physician, Dr. Alexander Lambert. Lambert did not mince words. He told Roosevelt directly, "You are facing a choice between 2 ideas. On one side is a medical theory that has been proven absolute scientific rigor. On the other side is an outdated superstition held by your bureaucrats. If you back the bureaucrats and fire Gorgas, you will not build this canal." Roosevelt made his choice. He kept Gorgas, overruled the commission, and gave the sanitary department full backing. Political support from Washington was critical, but Gorgas still needed a practical ally on the ground in Panama. He found that ally in July 1905 when a new chief engineer arrived to take charge of construction, John Stevens. Stevens was a tough, no-nonsense railway engineer who had built rail lines across the American West. When he stepped off the ship in Panama and saw terrified clerks fleeing home and steam shovels sitting idle in the rain, he understood immediately that civil engineering was useless without human biology. Stevens made a decision that shocked the commission. He ordered all excavation on the canal completely halted. He took thousands of laborers away from the railroad lines and steam shovels and reassigned them directly to Gorgas Sanitary Department. Stevens told his staff that there were 3 major obstacles in Panama: dirt, malaria, and yellow fever, and that the dirt was by far the easiest of the 3 to move. Construction would not restart until Gorgas had full control of the isthmus. With unlimited authority and labor, Gorgas launched one of the most intense, systematic chemical campaigns in human history. He divided the problem into 2 distinct biological wars, because the 2 mosquito species behaved in completely different ways. First was the fight against Aedes aegypti, the yellow fever carrier. This species was an urban insect. It lived close to human homes, bred in clean, artificial water containers, and rarely flew more than a few hundred feet from where it hatched. Gorgas turned Panama City and Colón into military zones. Teams of workers walked street by street, mapping every single house, church, and shop. To fumigate a building, workers pasted strips of old newspaper over every window crack, chimney, and wall gap to seal the structure completely. Then they brought in iron pots filled with sulfur or pyrethrum powder and set them ablaze, filling the sealed rooms with dense, suffocating smoke for hours. Gorgas used every pound of sulfur in the United States and bought out the entire commercial supply of pyrethrum powder in the Western Hemisphere. At the same time, inspectors inspected every roof gutter, rain barrel, and water cistern in Panama City. Because the city lacked a municipal water system, residents relied on stored rainwater. Inspectors forced homeowners to cover every barrel with tight wire mesh. If a barrel was found containing mosquito larvae, inspectors poured kerosene over the water, rendering it useless for insect breeding. Fumigating cities solved yellow fever, but malaria was a vastly larger problem. Malaria was carried by Anopheles mosquitoes, which bred in natural standing water across hundreds of square miles of dense jungle, swamps, and flooded construction ditches. To fight Anopheles, Gorgas created the oil brigades. Teams of Caribbean workers were armed with machetes, shovels, and heavy brass knapsack sprayers. They moved ahead of the construction crews, clearing tall grass around every camp for a distance of 300 yards. Beyond the typical flight range of the mosquito, they dug thousands of miles of drainage ditches to keep water moving. Where ditches could not be dug, workers strapped 30-pound tanks to their backs and sprayed a thick toxic mixture of heavy oil, carbolic acid, resin, and caustic soda directly onto the surface of standing pools. The thin film of oil broke the surface tension of the water, preventing mosquito larvae from attaching their breathing tubes and suffocating them before they could mature into adults. Over flowing streams, workers mounted wooden barrels filled with oil, rigged with adjustable drip valves. Day and night, month after month, these drip cans released steady drops of oil onto the surface of the moving water, carrying the suffocating film miles downstream into the jungle. The speed of the transformation was astonishing. In July 1905, when Stevens halted construction, yellow fever was striking dozens of people every week. By August, as house-to-house fumigation reached its peak, cases began to drop dramatically. In September, there were only 7 cases. In October, 3. On November 11, 1905, a patient was brought into the hospital at Ancon suffering from yellow fever. He recovered. After his discharge, not a single new case of yellow fever was reported in Panama City or Colón ever again. In less than 8 months, Gorgas' team had completely eradicated yellow fever from the Canal Zone, a disease that had terrorized the isthmus for 4 centuries. Malaria proved harder to eliminate entirely due to the vast size of the jungle, but the infection rate among canal workers dropped from over 80% down to less than 8% within 3 years. With the biological crisis resolved, John Stevens restarted the steam shovels in late 1905. The massive concrete locks were poured, the mountain cuts were carved, and in August 1914, the Panama Canal opened to world shipping, completed on schedule and under budget. Ultimately, the Panama Canal was not carved by dirt movers and steam shovels alone. Those massive machines only functioned because a marginalized doctor, backed by a pragmatic engineer, waged a relentless, unseen war against the biology of the jungle, proving that before a nation could move mountains, it first had to conquer the mud.